Hello and welcome to another Giant Slayer TFT How to Play video. Today our analysts will be diving into how to play compositions that utilize Kayle as the carry. The main build we'll be covering is Chrono Kayle. This will go over the general how to play for the build with separate sections for Galaxy, as those are special circumstances. Let's get right into the video. But before we begin, please don't forget to click the links in our description. Give your support to everyone who helped make this video happen. We host many TFT tournaments with plenty of exciting content to come, so be sure to also follow our Giant Slayer TFT social media pages. All right, folks, let's get back into the video, and to kick it off, we're going to start by going over the core items. One of the best aspects of Kayle as the main carry is how flexible she can be with items. Unlike a lot of other carries, you don't have to have absolutely perfect items on her to do well. Other than Kayle, the secondary item holder is usually Misfortune, with extra items being tossed on the front line. Generally, the order of item importance goes Kayle, then Misfortune, then frontline and utility items, but don't worry too much about securing Kayle items immediately in the early game. Core Kayle items revolve mostly around the bow. Rapid Fire Cannon and Rage Blade are the two best items you can get for her, with the third slot being flexible. It can be any of Morellonomicon, Death Cap, Guardian Angel, Static Shiv, Quicksilver, or Trap Claw. Focus on securing at least a Rage Blade for Kayle and then fill in the blanks from there. As mentioned, your items don't have to be perfect for her, just try to grab at least one attack speed item. Misfortune doesn't have set items you need to give her, but in general, any tier items do well on her to help her get her first ability off. Magic damage items are decent, though she does plenty of damage without them, so you can focus on mostly defensive items. Quicksilver is by far the best item on her to guarantee she gets at least one cast off without interruption. As for the frontline items, you can grab a smattering of good ones, including Bramble Vest, ZZ Rot Portal, or Guardian Angel. Look to give these items mostly to Wukong, though Thresh is fine as well. Lastly, Zephyr and Shroud of Stillness are always strong options, especially since Kayle compositions have a few champions that are easy to reposition since they're mostly used for their trades. Okay, with items out of the way, let's get into the core champions for the Kayle carry build. The primary build that uses Kayle is the Chrono Kayle build, and we'll go over a few other styles as well. To play Chrono Kayle, you of course need Kayle. The other core champions at level 8 are Shen, Xayah, Ezreal, Misfortune, Wukong, Kassadin, and Thresh. This will give you 3 Blade Master, 4 Chrono, 2 Valkyrie, 2 Celestial, and 2 Mana Reaver. At level 9, you have a few options, as you can just add a Lulu, as she's a strong legendary, or a second Kayle 2 for more damage. Blitzcrank is also a decent option to slot in at level 9 to mess with other players' positioning. For Chrono Kayle, your win condition is either Kayle 3 or Misfortune 2 with mercenary upgrades. Generally, if your champions are all upgraded and you have items on Kayle and Misfortune, you should be able to secure an easy top 3. Okay, let's move over to another variation that uses the same template as Chrono with Kayle carry, but instead of 4 Chrono, you play 4 Celestial with Mystic at level 9. The core champions at level 8 are Kayle, Shen, Xayah, Kassadin, Thresh, Misfortune, Lulu, and Ashe. You'll still get the initial benefit of the Chrono buff, but this serves to provide additional healing to the composition. At level 9, you can add any Mystic, though Karma is a decent option to boost and shield your Kayle. The win conditions for this variation are the same as Chrono Kayle, as you want either Kayle 3 or Misfortune 2 with the mercenary upgrades. And the last style of play that utilizes Kayle as the carry is Cybernetics plus Kayle. The core champions at level 8 are Kayle with all 6 Cybernetics and Misfortune. Generally, Kayle takes a back seat in this build as a secondary carry, and either Aurelia or Misfortune serves as the main carry, but if you have the items to work for her, it's fine to have Kayle as the primary carry. At level 9, you'll add in Thresh to give Mana Reaver for Aurelia, or you can add in Lulu just because she's an overall strong legendary champion. Your win condition for this build is either Kayle 3, Aurelia 3, or Misfortune 2 with those mercenary upgrades. All in all, Kayle is a flexible champion that can be slotted into quite a few builds as the main carry. Your main goal is to make sure she has both of her traits being utilized with a good frontline to protect her so that she can pop off. Look to position Kayle either in the second or third row, far left or far right side, right behind your front line. Try to position her away from where infiltrators are jumping, and also away from any obvious forms of CC such as Blitzcrank, Pull, or Vi. Now that we've touched on champions and items, let's get into different stages of the game, starting with the early game. For the beginning carousel, try to grab contested items like Sword or Chain Vest, as they get harder and harder to get as the game goes on. Otherwise, Bow, Glove, or Rod are all fine. All the components can currently be used in the build into something useful, so don't sweat it too much if you're unable to get what you want. Early game is simple, as you want to find 2-star champions and just play the strongest board you can. A few traits to look out for are early Cybernetics, Space Pirates, or even early Blade Master with Xayah as the item carry. Cybernetics are especially strong early game, not only to win streak with, but as a good base trait to build your mid-game composition around. Overall, the goal is to win streak, but if you're unable to, at least try to take take as little damage as possible, as keeping high health is important in the mid game. Make sure to build at least one item if you start off with 4 components, as playing greedy with your items can cause you to take unwanted damage early. Most lobbies tend to be aggressive, so try to keep up with the leveling curve of your lobby. If most of them are leveling to 5 on 2-5, then it's a good idea to do that as well, and the same goes for leveling it to 6 at 3-2. Mitigating damage taken and trying to build up your economy is all you need to focus on in the early game. Moving on, let's talk about the mid game, which is where most of the important decisions happen. To begin with, start scouting around Krugs 3-1 and 3-2, as that's a good point of the game to see what other players are going to play. Check their bench and what items they have, as those are the best indicators for what they may look to play. Also check to see what 4-cost champions, if any, other players have found, especially any early Kales. It's okay if other players are contesting Kale, but keep checking those players' boards specifically to see how many Kales they found and whether or not you'll need to pivot. As mentioned, you'll want to level to 6 around 3-2 or a few rounds after. Definitely level if you're win streaking, as you want to push your advantage and try to maintain that streak as long as possible. Aim for 50 gold, but don't skip out on buying upgrades each round, and pick up Kayle where you find her. As soon as you find one Kayle, it's a good time to begin pivoting your composition around her, so look to buy Chrono or Blade Master champions. A good rule of thumb for your economy is to try to have 50 gold by Wolves. The timing for level 7 varies depending on how much money you have prior to Wolves. If you're only just hitting 50 gold on Wolves, then you won't be able to level until 4-1, but if you've been win streaking or just have a lot of gold, you can level to 7 anytime from 3-5 to 4-1. Again, if you're win streaking with a strong board, you can look to push your advantage by leveling aggressively on 3-5. Once you're level 7, you have a few options. If you've been win streaking or kept your health high, you can play greedy and look to go to a fast level 8 at round 4-3. From there, you can begin slow rolling each round and try to piece together your core composition, with Kayle being the most important to upgrade. If your board is on the weaker side, you'll want to roll at level 7. Look for the core champions, as your goal at 7 is to find Kayle, Shen, Xayah, Wukong, Blitzcrank, Ezreal, and Kassadin. This will give you 3 Blade Master and 4 Chrono, and you should be strong enough to stabilize once you find upgrades for most of those champions. Don't roll too much though, as you want to maintain about 30 gold as your base economy to work with, so you can get to level 8 after Raptors. As soon as you find Kayle 2, you should be plenty strong and can stop rolling and save your gold to level to 8. Once you get level 8, the game becomes much simpler, as you're simply looking to fill in whatever gaps you're missing in your core composition and hitting upgrades for your champions. Kayle, of course, is the most important, but you definitely want to look for at least a Misfortune 1 at this point in the game. If you're unable to find her, then pick up a Kai'Sa as a trait bot for Valkyrie. Alright, let's move into the last stage of the game, which is of course the late game. This stage of the game really depends on how well your mid game went. If you got to level 8 with a good economy and health, with most of your champions upgraded, you're going to be chilling and can play the end game slowly. Save your gold and work towards hitting level 9, which will be sometime after the Kayn PvE round. Pick up any relevant upgrades that you find that you still need, but focus mainly on scouting and positioning while you work your way towards level 9. If your mid game didn't go that well and you're low on health and still missing upgrades in the late game, your options become much more limited. Your goal is to try and save until you're around 30 health, which should give you about 2 losses to work with. At that point, you want to go all in at level 8 with the intent of hitting anything you're missing. Misfortune 2 is especially important to find, as she's going to be what stabilizes you. While you will need to go all in if you're going to lose the game, you can look to roll at specific times as well. After a PvE round or carousel round are good times to spend gold and roll, as you get 1 round of safety with PvE rounds, and usually carousel rounds provide small power spikes. In any case, if you're able to stabilize, then you can begin working towards level 9, otherwise you're likely just playing to finish in the top 4. At level 9, add in a strong champion such as Lulu. From there, you'll want to hit all of your upgrades for your legendary champions and pick up any extra Kales that you find. Your win condition at this point is Misfortune 2 with several mercenary upgrades, or Kayle 3. Scout and position as needed, since the late game is almost entirely about positioning. Before we end the video, we're going to go over one last thing, and that's galaxies. We won't go over every galaxy, as you play most of them normally for Kayle builds, but there are 2 galaxies that are really good for Kayle. The first is the Lilac Nebula. This galaxy is great because you're able to get an ultra early Kayle if you snag her off the carousel. She's super strong at every stage of the game, so you can often win streak with her. If you're unable to grab her off the opening carousel, you can still try to play Kayle, but it may be best to alter your game plan. The second galaxy that's good for Kayle is the Nicoverse. Nicoverse is great because you can actually do several different things with the 2 Nico's help that you get. You can either make a super quick Kayle 2 when you find her, or a super quick Misfortune 2, or save for the ultra late game and go for Kayle 3. All of this depends on how strong you are, but don't don't be too greedy with them, as staying high health is more important than saving the Nikos. And the last galaxy we want to talk about is the Trade Sector Galaxy. For this galaxy, you want to try and level more aggressively to increase the odds of hitting an early Kayle, as you get 2 shops each round for free. Level to 5 at 2-5 and 6 on 3-2 to increase your chances of getting Kayle, as that's a great way of getting an early power spike. It's also helpful for the late game, as you can use the free rerolls to try to get Kayle 3. That's going to be it for today's video, folks. We hope this helps you climb the ladder when playing Kayle as your main carry. Be sure to let us know in the comments section below how your climb is going with this build, and if there's any builds that you'd like to see us cover in the future. Thanks for watching, and if you're enjoying our content, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for future Giant Slayer TFT videos.